Zeus and the rise of Olympus, the battle against the Titans. The world was once quiet in a way that is difficult to imagine now, quiet not with peace, but with tension, as if creation itself held its breath. Before Olympus rose, and before mortals learned the names of gods, the heavens were ruled by the ancient ones. The Titans, tall as mountains, their voices rolling like thunder across the newborn earth. They walked in a world still cooling from chaos, a world of raw stone and rising seas, where the sky had no master and destiny had no direction. But every era ends, even those carved by beings of impossible strength. And if you listen closely enough, if you let the mind drift as though sitting beside a quiet fire, you can still hear the echoes of a rebellion, so vast it reshaped the cosmos. This is the tale of the rise of Zeus, the last son of Cronus, and the war that shattered the age of the Titans. It begins long before Zeus opened his eyes. It begins with prophecy. The Titan Cronus, son of Uranus and Gaia, had once been a liberator. With his sickle of unbreakable adamantine, he overthrew his father and freed the world from a tyrant who devoured his own offspring and buried them deep within the earth. But power does strange things even to the greatest of beings. Once Cronus sat upon the throne of the cosmos, once the sky bent to his will, he began to fear the very pattern he had continued. For Gaia, who had seen ages come and go, whispered a truth into the world, a prophecy carried softly through roots and stones, through the low hum of the sea, that Cronus, too, would be dethroned by his own child. The word slipped into the Titan King's mind like poison. Fear took root, mingled with pride, and became something darker. Cronus, determined not to share his father's fate, acted quickly. When Rhea, his queen, bore their children, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, Cronus consumed each one. The infants disappeared into his vast form, trapped in a twilight realm of stillness and unending slumber. Rhea's heart broke with each stolen child. She walked the halls of their palace on Mount Othrys with a hollow ache, her grief growing so heavy that even the earth trembled beneath her feet. And though she was queen, though she had power beyond measure, she found no strength to stop the cycle until the birth of her youngest. When the time came, Rhea fled. She journeyed across land and sea until she reached Crete, a land still wild and fragrant with life. Beneath star crowns and ancient winds, she gave birth to her last son. His cry was soft at first, but behind it was something unmistakable, something the world had been waiting for. A calm strength, a rising storm, a presence the Titans had not expected. She named him Zeus, fearing Cronus' detection. Rhea hid the newborn in a cave on Mount Ida. Nymphs nursed him with honeyed milk, and the divine god Amalthea sheltered him beneath her warm flank. Outside, the armored dancers known as the Curetes clashed their shields and spears rhythmically to mask his cries, letting the cave fill with a metallic thunder that fooled even the ears of a Titan king. Zeus grew quickly, as those touched by divine purpose often do. His childhood was briefer than mortal minds can grasp, yet rich with memories shaped by the hidden world around him. He learned the way fire curls in the wind, how thunder forms inside the body of a storm, and how strength must be guided, not unleashed blindly. From the nymphs he learned gentleness. From the mountain he learned endurance. From solitude he learned clarity. But destiny never sleeps. When Zeus was grown, he left a cave that had been both sanctuary and prison. He traveled the world in secret, learning its hidden truths. He saw the deep forests where Titans shaped rivers with their steps. He felt the pulse of the earth where giants murmured in their sleep. And in the wind he heard the quiet, steady call of those who had been swallowed before him, his siblings, trapped yet alive, waiting for a liberator. He knew then what he had to do, with the quiet confidence of someone who has accepted a fate larger than himself. Zeus sought out Métis, the Titaness of wisdom. She understood the tides of fate better than most, and when Zeus approached her, she felt at once the shift of an era pressing against her mind. Zeus did not demand her help. He asked for it with humility, and that humility won her loyalty. Métis told him the truth. Cronus could not be challenged until Zeus freed his siblings from the prison of their father's stomach. And so she prepared a potion crafted from rare herbs that grew only where moonlight met the sea. It glowed with a strange silver warmth, like distilled truth, disguised as a cupbearer. Zeus entered Cronus' great palace. Titans roamed the hall, their shadows stretching far across stone floors, but none looked twice at him. Cronus, heavy with pride and unaware of the storm at his doorstep, accepted the cup Zeus offered. He drank. A rumble spread through the Titan King's body, rising like a tremor from deep within. His eyes widened. A moment later, with a cry that shook the pillars of Orthes, Cronus retched forth the gods he had swallowed. One by one, they emerged. Hestia, radiant and gentle; Demeter, strong as harvest; Hera, fierce with quiet fire; Hades, shadow-eyed and solemn; Poseidon, with the storm already whispering in his pulse. They stood beside Zeus, their youngest brother, now their leader. Freedom came with fury. Confusion turned into resolve. And above them, the stars shifted, as if recognizing a new constellation forming. One not yet written, one that would change all creation. Cronus roared across the cosmos, and the Titans gathered at his side. The younger gods stood behind Zeus, their power still new but burning with purpose. The world felt the tension of two ages colliding, the old resisting the inevitable, the new rising with thunder in its veins. And so began the great 10-year war. But war on a divine scale does not erupt all at once. It starts with a fracture in the air, a silence before the first strike, a breath held by mountains and seas alike. Before the storms of Olympus broke over the kingdom of the Titans, before the sky was torn open by weapons forged from the heart of creation, Zeus and his siblings needed allies, those older than Titans, older even than the fear that shaped them. They needed the imprisoned, deep within the earth, buried in caverns of darkness, where even Titans feared to tread. The Cyclopes and the 100-handers waited in chains. Their power had been sealed away by Uranus and later forgotten by Cronus, who feared what they might unleash. Zeus felt their presence from afar, a weight, a potential, a voice from the earth asking to be heard. He descended with his siblings to those forbidden depths. The earth groaned as if recognizing the one destined to shake its foundations. Shadows stretched like long memories across jagged stone. When Zeus saw the Cyclopes, massive, with single blazing eyes dimmed by centuries of confinement, he felt not fear, but sorrow. And when he saw the 100-handers, each with 50 heads and 100 mighty arms, he felt awe at the strength denied the world. Zeus broke their chains, not with force alone, but with a promise that they would stand together to end the tyranny of ages and build a new order where none would be imprisoned simply for existing. Gratitude burned bright in the hearts of those ancient beings, and from that gratitude came 3 gifts, gifts that shaped the world forever. The Cyclopes forged for Zeus a thunderbolt, pure energy drawn from the veins of the sky. For Poseidon, they shaped a trident that could command every tide. For Hades, they crafted a helm of shadows that could make him unseen, unheard, unstoppable. As each god accepted their gift, the world trembled again, this time in anticipation. The war had not yet begun in full, but destiny had chosen its champions. The Titans felt the shift like a chill. The younger gods felt it like a spark. And across the world, mortals not yet born would someday tell stories of this moment, the moment before the storm. And so the armies gathered. The Titans stood tall upon Mount Orthes, their ancient fortress, carved from stone older than memory. Zeus and his siblings ascended Mount Olympus, not yet the shining kingdom it would become, but a high peak touching the winds, chosen for the battles that would one day define it. The sky dimmed, the air thickened, and in the vast silence before the first blow, Zeus looked toward his father, not with hatred, but with understanding. Cronus had become what he once destroyed, and the cycle would end here, with thunder in the air and a new order waiting to be born. The first strike would come swiftly, but the story of this war, the pain, the triumph, the shifting of an age, unfolds slowly, like a great tapestry of fate being unwoven and rewoven in the same breath. And that is where the next part begins. The silence before the first clash between God and Titan lingered, like a thick mist over mountains and seas. Even the winds hesitated, as though unsure which age they belonged to. Zeus stood at the peak of Olympus, his form illuminated not by sunlight, but by the faint shimmer of power gathering in his palm. His brothers and sisters formed a quiet circle around him, each knowing that the next breath would carry them into a war no being had ever witnessed. Down below, the Titans prepared on Mount Othries. They were older than storms, older than the patterns of the night sky. Their bodies carried the weight of primordial creation, each movement slow, deliberate, heavy with centuries of dominion. Cronus stood at their head, his expression carved from stone, his eyes dark with the certainty that he stood not only against rebels, but against fate itself. The first strike came not from Zeus, but from the eldest of the 100-handers. Briareus stepped forward, his 100 arms rising like an immense forest of power. With a single motion, he hurled a massive boulder across the sky. It arced in silence, glowing faintly as it crossed from one mountain to the other. But before it struck the heights of Othries, Hyperion, the Titan of Light, raised a hand. A blazing flare leapt from his palm, exploding the boulder into dust that sparkled across the heavens, like scattered stars. The war had begun. From Olympus, Zeus raised his thunderbolt. It thrummed with a living pulse, as though the sky itself recognized its master. He cast it forward, and the bolt tore through the air with a blinding streak, striking the slopes of Othries with a roar that shook the foundations of the world. Flames burst from the mountain, rolling down its sides like molten rivers. The air split with sound, and all creation shuddered. Titans answered in unison, unleashing power that had shaped oceans and carved valleys. Some brought earthquakes with their steps, others summoned winds sharp as jagged stone. Their roars echoed across the world, fierce and ancient. The younger gods responded as one. Poseidon leapt forward, the trident spinning in his grasp. With a sweeping arc, he called forth the strength of the seas. Though the ocean was far from Olympus, water obeyed him regardless. It rose like a spiraling column, twisting into the sky before crashing upon the Titans' front lines. The impact carved chasms through the battlefield, splitting rock and soil, drowning the roar of flames for a moment. Hades walked silently into the chaos, with the helm of darkness upon his brow. His form dissolved, slipping into shadows. The Titans could not see him, nor hear him, nor sense his presence. He moved like an absence in the world, stepping between the tremors and lights, approaching the battlefield's heart without notice. Hestia, Demeter, and Hera took their positions behind Zeus, their power supporting the structure of the fight. Hestia centered the battlefield with warmth and stability, grounding the younger god's strength. Demeter summoned vines and roots from the earth, binding the ankles of Titans and slowing their strides. Hera, regal and fierce, commanded winds that bolstered Olympus' forces and shielded them from Titan blows. But even with their united might, the Titans were formidable beyond imagining. Zeus, the Titan of intellect and the northern axis of the world, spoke a single word, just one, and the sky darkened. The constellations pulled away, the stars shifting subtly as though disoriented. The battlefield distorted, making it difficult for the young gods to gauge distances. The power of knowledge, weaponized, twisted their perception. Cronus, commander of constellations, followed with a strike that set the heavens ablaze with streaks of burning light. They rained upon Olympus, each falling star a weapon forged from cosmic fire. The 100-handers shielded the gods, raising walls of stone torn from the ground. Meteors exploded upon their defense, lighting the world in flashes so brilliant they cast massive shadows across the landscape. Zeus lifted his hand again, summoning the storm. Clouds thickened in an instant, swirling and crackling with electricity. Lightning spiraled around him, dancing along his arms like living serpents of energy. With a fierce cry born from the purpose in his heart, Zeus hurled bolt after bolt, each one splitting mountainsides and forcing Titans back a step. Yet Cronus stood unmoved. He watched his son's rising power with a calm so unnerving it silenced even his allies. Then, with an ease that defied the chaos, Cronus stepped forward and raised his sickle. The sickle of adamantine glinted with the cold light of creation itself. With a single swing, he cleaved through one of Zeus' bolts, splitting it into harmless sparks that scattered in the wind. With the next swing, he tore through a massive boulder hurled by Gyges, shattering it into dust before it could reach the Titan's line. Cronus moved like a memory, fluid, ancient, familiar, and yet entirely overwhelming. He spoke, and his voice rolled through the battlefield. "You challenge the order of the world," he said, "but the world is mine." Zeus descended from the clouds, landing before Cronus, with thunder still swirling in his eyes. He felt the weight of the prophecy between them, not as a burden, but as an inevitability he refused to deny. "You ruled with fear," Zeus answered. "An age built on fear cannot last." Cronus attacked without another word. The sickle slashed through the air, carving a scar in the sky itself. Zeus dove aside, the blade passing inches from his chest. Lightning exploded where he landed, sending shockwaves across the ground. Cronus responded by stomping the earth, raising colossal pillars of stone that thrust upward, threatening to impale the young god. Zeus leapt between them, lightning flashing at his heels. Cronus pursued with the relentless certainty of a storm. The two clashed again and again, their blows echoing across mountains and seas. Titans and gods paused at moments, drawn to the intensity of the duel. Father and son at the center of creation's greatest storm. But the war was more than their personal battle. Elsewhere on the field, the Cyclopes unleashed their own power. Thunder roared from their massive fists. Blazing beams of raw energy shot from their single eyes. Their voices boomed with centuries of anger, uprooting trees and splitting rock. The 100-handers fought with a ferocity unmatched by anything alive. Their 100 arms hurled stones, mountains, entire ridges, forcing the Titans to divide their attention. For every attack the Titans launched, a storm of boulders answered. Still, the Titans endured. Their strength, their age, their knowledge of creation itself made them nearly insurmountable. The earth trembled beneath the weight of their steps. The seas churned with each command, and the sky warped under the force of their will. But deep in the shadows, Hades prepared a strike that would turn the tide. Invisible, silent, he slipped behind Iapetus, the Titan often called the Piercer. Iapetus, aware of something off, but unable to perceive it, paused for the briefest moment. It was all Hades needed. With a swift motion, Hades thrust his hand, dripping with the cold of the void, against the Titan's back. The shadows surged forward, engulfing Iapetus like a tide of night. Disoriented, the Titan stumbled, and in that instant, Briareus hurled a mountain directly into him. The impact shook the battlefield, sending dust and stone flying in all directions. A murmur spread among the Titans. One of their greatest had fallen. Zeus felt the shift, the barest tilt in the balance of power. He raised his hand skyward, summoning a bolt brighter and heavier than any before. Cronus stepped back, sensing danger, but not quickly enough. The bolt struck him squarely in the chest. The shockwave rippled through the battlefield, driving Titans to their knees and splitting the air with a roar that echoed across the world. Cronus sank to one knee, smoke rising from his body, but he did not fall. With a furious cry, Cronus rose, swinging the sickle in a wide arc. It collided with Zeus' next bolt, detonating in a cascade of energy that washed over mountains and valleys. Neither yielded. Both understood that the war would not be decided in a single blow. The battle lasted day after day, though the sun and moon refused to cross the sky. Time itself seemed to hold its breath as gods and Titans clashed, reshaping the world with every strike. Rivers shifted course. Forests burned and regrew in the span of hours. Mountains rose and fell like breaths. The world was no longer merely a battlefield. It was a living witness to the end of an age. Yet even in the chaos, Zeus sensed something deeper, a rhythm, a pattern to the Titans' movements. They fought with immense strength, but their unity was fractured. Old rivalries, old fears, the fatigue of an age nearing its end. The younger gods, however, fought as one. It was this unity that would change everything. But the final turning point of the Titanomachy, the moment when Olympus rose and the Titans fell, was still approaching, gathering power quietly like a storm on the horizon. The war stretched on, long enough that the earth itself began to feel weary beneath the weight of so many wounds. The sky flickered between darkness and dim light, never fully committing to day or night, as though time hesitated to move forward until the battle reached its end. Rivers rerouted themselves around scarred land. The seas churned with restless tides, and mountains trembled with every distant impact of god or Titan. Zeus stood at the edge of a ravine carved by the clash of thunder and stone. His breaths came slowly, not from exhaustion. Divine beings did not tire as mortals do, but from the heavy understanding that the war still demanded more of him. His siblings gathered behind him, each marked by the conflict. Poseidon's trident hummed with lingering energy, its prongs still crackling faintly from recent strikes. Hades had removed his helm, the shadows settling behind him like obedient wraiths awaiting their next purpose. Hera tended to Demeter's arm, which had been grazed by a blast of primordial light from Hyperion. Hestia stood quietly, her hands glowing with comforting warmth, the anchor of their group. "Even now," Hera murmured, her voice steady but tinged with frustration, "they push us as though we were still children." Poseidon smirked faintly. "Let them think so. The sea does not boast before the wave pulls down a cliff." Zeus looked across the ravine toward Mount Othrys, where the Titans had regathered at the fortress they had carved long before gods walked the world. The mountain rose like a colossal shadow, its peak shrouded in swirling clouds of ash and cosmic fire. The Titans stood atop it, their figures towering in silhouettes of ancient power. Cronus waited among them, sickle glinting faintly in the stormlight. Zeus felt the weight of that gaze, even at such distance. "This ends soon," he said quietly, "one way or another." Yet ending an age required more than strength or determination. It demanded finality, the shifting of the very forces that had shaped the world since creation. And the Titans still held one advantage the younger gods had not yet overcome. Othrys, their fortress, was anchored to the old laws of existence. As long as it stood, the Titans retained a grip on the world's balance. Métis appeared beside Zeus then, silent and radiant like moonlight, slipping through a cave opening. Wisdom had a way of appearing without fanfare. She placed a hand on his arm and spoke softly. "The Titans draw their strength from Othrys. Break the mountain, and you break their bond to the old order." Zeus nodded. "Then we bring it down." But tearing down a mountain shaped by primordial hands required power beyond even the gods. Power of the ancient and forgotten kind. And that meant turning once more to the 100-handers. Briareus, Gyges, and Cottus approached with steps that shook the ground. Each towered above the gods, their many arms flexing like a forest of living strength. Their eyes glowed with a mix of gratitude and fierce determination. "You freed us," Briareus rumbled, his voice like shifting earth. "Let us return the world to balance." Zeus placed a hand upon the massive wrist of the giant, a gesture of respect. "Your help will end this war. Fight beside us once more." The agreement forged, a new plan took shape. The younger gods would draw out the Titans, challenging them to a final confrontation outside the fortress of Othrys. Meanwhile, the 100-handers would approach from below and strike at the foundations of the mountain. Remove the throne, and the king would fall. Remove the mountain, and the age would collapse. It was a plan born of strategy, not raw force, and that was something the Titans did not expect. When the next dawnless morning came, Zeus stood on the plain below Othrys. He lifted his thunderbolt, letting its glow spread across the battlefield. The Titans emerged slowly from their fortress, their forms vast and imposing, each step sending tremors through the earth. Cronus led them with the calmness of one who believed himself eternal. The air tightened, the winds withdrew, the mountains strained against the silence. Then Zeus spoke, his voice echoing across the world. "Cronus, Titans, this is the final stand." The ground cracked beneath Poseidon's feet as he struck the earth with his trident, sending a surge of water spiraling upward, swirling around him like a living shield. Hera summoned the winds, creating a barrier that hummed with divine energy. Demeter called forth thick vines and roots that curled across the battlefield, pulsing with the life of the earth itself. Hestia's presence radiated calm, anchoring their power, stabilizing the chaos. And Hades, silent, composed, donning his helm once more, vanished from sight. The Titans responded in thunderous unison. Hyperion unleashed a beam of pure radiance that cut through the air like a spear. Sia spoke a command that distorted space itself, bending the battlefield so that distances stretched and collapsed in unnatural patterns. Oceanus, who had mostly watched the war with the patient weight of the sea, finally joined the conflict with a wave that towered above the plains, its crest sharp as a blade. But the younger gods were no longer the uncertain rebels of the war's first days. They fought with unity born of shared purpose, with strength refined through struggle. Zeus hurled lightning that split Hyperion's beam, flooding the battlefield with crackling shards of light. Poseidon parted Oceanus' wave with a mighty roar, forcing the Titan of the seas to recoil with surprise. Hera and Demeter combined their powers, binding Zeus with storm winds and roots until he could no longer twist reality around him. Still, the Titans pushed back. The ground split open beneath the gods, lava pouring forth in glowing rivers summoned by Cronus. Atlas charged like a moving mountain, his fist smashing the ground with devastating force, sending quakes rolling across the plain. Mnemosyne, Titaness of memory, murmured words that caused the young gods to momentarily falter as long-forgotten pains echoed through their minds. And Cronus stepped forward, his sickle raised, aiming directly for Zeus. But as the Titans focused their strength outward, none noticed the tremors rising not from the battlefield, but from beneath Othries itself. Deep underground, the 100-handers tore at the roots of the mountain. Massive boulders were ripped free, foundations shattered, caverns collapsed. The mountain began to groan, not with the voice of a living thing, but with the sound of inevitability breaking through centuries of resistance. Cracks spread across Othries' base. The ground trembled violently beneath the Titan's feet. Cronus paused, his eyes narrowing. Zeus saw the realization in his father's expression, a heartbeat, before it was spoken. "You," Cronus whispered, voice low with sudden fury. "You would destroy our throne." Zeus raised his thunderbolt. "Your throne," he said softly, "has no place in the world to come." Othries buckled with a thunderous roar. The Titans staggered as the ground beneath them shifted violently. Atlas fell to one knee, the earth giving way. Hyperion cried out as he stumbled, light flickering wildly across his form. Zeus grasped at the collapsing ground, but the roots tethering him broke. Cronus braced himself, but even he could not stop a mountain from falling. Zeus raised both hands. The sky obeyed him. A storm gathered with breathtaking speed, clouds swirling in a colossal vortex overhead. Lightning flashed inward, converging into the thunderbolt, and Zeus grasped until it glowed brighter than the sun had in years. "Let the old age fall," he whispered. He hurled the bolt. It plunged into Othries with unimaginable force. The explosion was not a burst, it was a release. The mountain shattered. Stone flew in vast wings of dust and fire. The earth shook violently, sending Titans crashing downward. The fortress crumbled as though struck by the fist of creation itself. And with Othries' fall, the Titan's power weakened all at once. Cronus staggered backward, the sickle slipping from his grasp as the surge of ancient strength drained from him like water spilling from a cracked vessel. The Titans around him groaned, collapsing to their knees. Zeus descended slowly, lightning swirling around him like a crown newly forged. Cronus lifted his head, eyes filled not with anger, but with the worn emptiness of one who has witnessed his own era end. "Have you come to destroy me?" he asked quietly. Zeus shook his head. "No, but your rule ends here." Cronus closed his eyes as Zeus raised a hand, calling upon the bonds of Tartarus. Chains formed from shadows, and divine light materialized, wrapping around Cronus' limbs. One by one, they bound the remaining Titans. Hades emerged from the darkness, guiding the shadows. Poseidon summoned walls of stone and water to strengthen their prison. Hera and Demeter sealed the bonds with the authority of divine justice. The Titans, defeated, were cast into Tartarus, an abyss beneath the earth, a realm where even time dared not tread. When the final gate closed, silence rippled across the world. The war was over. Zeus stood among his siblings on the broken plain, dawn finally breaking overhead, the first true dawn in years. Light stretched slowly across the wounded land, revealing smoke, shattered rock, scorched forests, and rivers still trembling with lingering power. But dawn meant something else as well, a new age, the age of the Olympians. Zeus looked to his brothers and sisters, his voice steady and soft. "The world has changed. Now we must rebuild it." Hera stepped beside him and guided. Poseidon lifted his trident and shaped its seas. Hades watched the horizon quietly and guard its boundaries. Hestia smiled gently and keep its peace. Demeter touched the ground, coaxing the first green sprout to break through the scorched soil and nurture its life. Zeus lifted his thunderbolt toward the sky, and the clouds parted. Olympian light spread across the world like a promise kept, and high above, atop the mountain that would now bear their name, a new realm awaited them, shining, golden, eternal. Mount Olympus, the throne was his, the age was theirs, and the world would forever remember the day the Titans fell and the gods rose. But all stories, even those of gods, carry a truth within them, a message repeated across ages. Power must be earned, dominion must be just, and the world belongs not to those who hold it longest, but to those who guide it with wisdom and mercy. And that is the legend of Zeus and the rise of Olympus.